What's going on, guys, girls, bolts, jolts, and sparks alike? Raijin Wolf here on the mic, and today we're talking about my thoughts on story writing, namely characters, dialogue, and a bit about plot as well. I first want to briefly apologize for not uploading this yesterday. Something came up that required my immediate attention, and I only got in like shortly before midnight, so I was able to upload my introductory video. But for that out of the way, let me just briefly break down what these are going to be like. I'm going to, well, since story writing and poems are very broad topics, I'm going to pick a few main points just to talk about for a little while. I'm not sure how long these are going to be. They might span from as short as 15 minutes to as long as 35, something like that. But this is just going to be me talking on the mic about, well, things that I have passion in. So let's just jump right into this. So first of all, we have your characters. Now, before you even have to talk about characters, we have to talk about cast size. And what I mean when I mention cast size is having a large cast, it does present a lot more choice of variety with the personalities portrayed in your characters. And although it's a common saying, the more the merrier, I do feel like it has a chance of hindering your characters individually by having so many. This is of course because if you have so many characters, you may have some trouble fleshing out each and every one of them, or you'll find that you're picking favorites when all of them are on level ground. So, well, the obvious counter to this would be to not do that many characters at all, to have a small cast. And this does ensure that you'll have guaranteed quality with the few characters you do use, but you also have to be wary of is now you're limiting the variety of characters you can have. So it's all about finding the balance there and really tailoring it to your writing style and what suits you best. If you're good at doing lots of characters and putting a lot of focus on all of them, go ahead. It's been done many times before, so it's not like it's impossible. Same for short casts. And with that out of the way, I'm going to delve into actually creating a character now. So when you're making a character, when you're establishing a character, there are the most basic things that everyone should adhere to. You know, first name, last name, likes, dislikes, you know, the basics. But what you also need to include is like their drive, like what's motivated their decisions in the past, how is that influencing their actions now, and how is that going to influence their their mindset and their thoughts on the future. Like you have to build your character's life because it's like your story doesn't start like when your story starts, your world doesn't start at the same time. Your world's already been established. It's already been going on for some time. Just because your story's starting now, your first chapter's starting now, doesn't mean the world has. You want to, mostly when you're doing a story, to have the world have some history to it so you can expand on later on, because that creates a lot more character depth later on when you're going to need it, and also possibly deepening the plot depending on what is involved in said history. So now there's character design. So what does your character look like? What does he or she look like? And this is completely up to you. There's no one thing you should stick to with this. It's just however you feel the character should look. I do believe the key to this is when you picture this character, what do they look like? And write that. If you write what you picture the character to look like that will become the character, and people will see the character that way also. And like that's something that a lot of people might have some trouble with. They might be thinking, oh, why don't I make him look like this? I don't know if I want to make his hair this color or make his hair this color. And although their appearance does matter, people aren't reading it for how stunning this guy looks, okay? They're not reading it because of how well the scripted his looks are. They're reading it because they wanna know the character. Looks are something that are just on the surface. They want to see what's beneath that, the deeper meaning. So, on the topic of what the reader wants to see, I'm now going to talk about introducing your character to the reader. So, what happens when your character's first being introduced? Whether it's your main character or a side character, what do you want the reader to be thinking? It should be, ideally, as if the reader was meeting someone out on the street. So you don't make like dead on judgments about someone and categorize them instantly. Well, not everyone does. But you do get an idea about some people by the way they act, things they say and do. And that's what you want your character to be showing to them. You want your audience to be thinking a certain way about your character, because then you can build off of that and build your character's personality off of that. Or if you have that character do something that's unlike the character, then you can have the audience caught up in that, like, oh, why was he doing that? Why did he do that? It's all about like getting into the reader's head, making them see certain things and like think certain things about your characters. Because once they get connected to your characters, then you can do a large number of things that I'll probably go into a bit later. So your reader has met the character now. They've gotten to know them a bit on the base level. They know what they're like in a way. So now you've got to talk about developing your character. And when I say developing your character, I don't mean a chapter of their whole backstory, because that isn't developing your character. That's just telling the audience, your reader, your character's life story. The reader is barely going to be interested in that after just meeting the character. But what you want to do is slowly reveal certain things from your character's actions and words that are pointing towards something that occurred in their past or something that's going on right now. You want to have something that alludes to the greater thing. So even having them say one line, it's gonna create this deeper thing. Oh, why did he say that? What's going on? This is something to do with his past. Now we're learning more about this character. Well, where did all this come from? And you see that you can build off of the very littlest things just by having a concrete timeline for your character in a way. So I've been focusing a lot on one character, and what a lot of focus goes into when it comes to characters is the main protagonist. And I'm just going to be straightforward when it comes to them. I don't like the cliche, I'm going to do this because it's the right thing to do. I think that's beyond overdone. I believe it's something that's boring, and it just makes your character seem shallow. It makes him seem like he has no morals or bearings or any thoughts and decisions on his own. He's just simply doing this because it's the right thing to do morally. By the vast majority, it's decided that that's the right thing to do. Why doesn't he do something that's questionable? Have your character do something that's questionable by most people. Have them thinking, well, what's going on here? That's not right. In his opinion, it might be. In his opinion, he might know that what he's doing is wrong. But it's the purpose, it's the reasons behind these actions that are going to really flesh out your character and make them more human-like than someone who goes around saving the world because the world's in danger. I'm gonna relate this to an anime called Zetsu no Tempest, an English translation being Blast of Tempest, Civilization Blaster. And in this, I won't go into too much detail, but if you know the anime, then you know that the two main characters, Yoshino and Mahiro, they go through this world that's slowly on the brink of destruction. And throughout all of this, they're just thinking, well, one of them's thinking, I don't care about this. Yeah, the world's doing this, I don't care. I've got my goal and I've got my thing set in sight. If I can save the world while doing it, then that's just an added bonus. And to most people, they feel like, oh, well, he's just stone cold, and he doesn't care about the world. All those people are going to die, yada yada yada. But he's not. It's not like he doesn't care about the world. It's just he has prioritized something that's the most important to him, and he wants to accomplish that no matter what. And he even says himself, if you can save the world in the process, then that's just an added bonus. But that's enough on that. Now I'm gonna go on to the other side of the moral moral debate and talk about the main antagonist, if you have one. You probably do. The main antagonist of the story is this. I had the same thing with this as I do the main protagonist. I feel that if you just have a villain if you have an antagonist who's a villain, who's just bad and does bad things because he's a bad guy, then it just comes across as like he has no desires. Like, why is he doing this? Like, yeah, we see what he's doing and we understand how terrible it is and how much we should hate him, but why is he doing it? We won't grow to hate the character because of what he's doing. We'll grow to hate the character because there's no purpose or reasoning behind their actions. And that's something that a lot of people will miss out on. They won't see that. And they'll go and make a cookie cutter villain who's simply there for the main protagonist to take down at the end and have conflict with. But I embarked to make the main antagonist, in my story at least, something more. Like I will go into more detail about the interactions between the main protagonist and the main antagonist and how they relate to each other when I get to the section talking about plot. But right now, I just want to stick on the topic of characters and slowly progress into dialogue from there. So just rounding up on the topic of characters before I do go to dialogue, I just want to go back to when I spoke about cast size and touch on the whole side character thing in a story. Now, in a story, it's inevitable you're going to have side characters. Not every character can be the main character. In fact, in most stories you're going to have just one main character, and then side characters along the way. Now, if they're going to be like engaged in the plot and with that the main character a lot, then they need to be fleshed out just as much, because they are also going to be someone who the reader is going to, over time, form any connection with, be it positive or negative. They're going to start to be interested or be curious about the character. They'll be thinking, oh, well, why is this character coming along? They have no reason to do this. And once again, you want to be establishing that character's timeline. And it all goes back to when I was talking about, creating, introducing, and developing a character. You want to be doing exactly what you're doing for your main protagonist, for your side characters. Just because they're side characters doesn't mean that we don't want fleshed out characters, because if you can avoid having cliches, you should at any given moment, because I've seen that a lot in stories lately. It's that the main character so well written, but then the side characters surrounding the main character are just cardboard cutouts of cliches, and that brings down the main character, because I'm thinking, wait, he wouldn't hang out with them. He wouldn't hang out with them because they're just bland and shallow. Why are they all in the same environment? How did they get in the same predicament? And that's just my thoughts on the characters. So now I'm going to talk a little bit about dialogue. So first, I feel to talk about character interaction. So without straying too far from characters, just while it's fresh in your head, character interaction, when I say that, I'm talking about, well, how one character or multiple characters communicate with each other. Like what's said, what's unsaid. And this like sets mood and tone and can do pacing so well if it's done well. It can build on characters at the same time. It can build on multiple characters at the same time if it's done well. For example, if you have two of your characters walking down the street and they see each other, do they say hi? Do they just simply wave and keep walking? Do they stop and have a whole conversation? Or do they say anything at all? Like, why do they do this? It's these things that are just gonna make the reader be thinking, okay, well, why is this the case? Why is action or no action happened? Like, what happened between these characters? Once again, it's that past, that history that you really want to have for your story before the first chapter starts. Because if your world starts when your story starts, then all you have to go off of is current events and events that will happen in the future. There is no history, there is no background, there's no foundation for the state of relations. And while I'm talking about characters interacting with each other, I'm going to briefly touch on a character's voice. And I don't mean the literal meaning. I don't mean like how does it sound? Is it high pitched? Is it low pitched? I'm talking about how they talk. The words they use, the vocabulary they use. Do they continuously stop and then continue? Do they keep talking without taking a break? Do they use a lot of slang? Do they not? It's these little things that are gonna clue us in about your character and like where they're coming from with their background. And something that's a problem is if you have multiple characters who inevitably have the same voice. I mean, one of the things you need to learn when you're writing first and especially third person is that multiple characters should not have the same voice. You need to learn how to get into a different mindset and write another character's dialogue as that character. Because you may be saying the character's words, but you're going to be having them said the same way as other characters because you haven't changed enough. And I don't mean going to completely broken English for one character and then intensely formal for another. I mean just little things. So does he say gonna instead of going to? Do they say have to instead of have to? These little things that like, oh, are they light-hearted? Are they serious? Are they too uptight? It's the very small things that you show with a character that are gonna really build upon each other and end up making the character a very strong and sturdy person within a story. And now I'm going to talk about a character's words and actions. At the end of the day, a character's words and actions, who they are, who they were, who they're going to be, we all remember that from what that character's done, what they're doing, what they're going to do. We remember a character by what they say and what they've done. So when you want a character to leave a powerful effect, you need to really make sure the dialogue's there. Like, you need to make sure that everything they say has a lot of, like, it stops. It makes you stop and think and really hear what they're saying. And it's one-liners or speeches like those that have made a lot of anime and manga characters some of the most memorable icons in the media, because it's those things that they say and do that we remember them by. Like, one that I remember just off the top of my head is N from the Pokemon series. The things he said and the things he done, you didn't see him as a bad guy once you heard them. You saw him as someone who was just following what he knew and what he thought was right, just like you were. Another that I think of when I think of memorable characters is Johann Lyebert from the series Monster. And if you know of Johann, then you know the type of man he is. You know what he's done and what he's doing and what his goals are. And it's some of the things he said, they traversed the world of fiction. It hit you from beyond the computer screen and you felt it because it meant something. And on top of that, you're going to want relatability. Certain things your characters say and do, the reader's going to be able to relate to that because they're going through life just like the reader. So some things that occur may have the reader think, well, hold on, yeah, I've been through something like that, or I've experienced this feeling, or I know what this is like. And relatability is the best way of having the reader and a character connect. Because if they can feel empathy for what that character's experiencing or experienced in the past, then it's just making what they think of that character like that much more sturdy and strong. So before I wrap up, I just want to talk about the plot. I won't go too heavily on this because I'm planning on doing a bigger discussion about everything to do with your plot and characters in the grander scheme of things. But I'll briefly just talk about the character's influence on the plot. I'll keep it basic. Your main character or your side characters need to have some influence on the plot, on the events going on around them. If they don't, then they're not living in that world. Because the world's everyone's alive and they're living, they're making choices. If these choices don't at some point affect the plot and what's going to happen in the future or what's happening right now, then you've missed out on an opportunity. You've missed out on an opportunity to really intertwine your characters with the world they're in. Because when a story starts, it's your characters in a world. It's this world with your characters in it. By the time your story's hitting the midpoint or even the end, you want it to be, this is their world. This is the world they're living in. This is the things they experience and the things they have to do. The choices they have to make. The choices that they have to not make. Who knows? And I feel like, well, me personally, I recently uploaded the first chapter of my story, Dead Batteries. And what I'm doing with that is, if you've checked it out, then you'll see that the main character, just from who he is, has probably already impacted the plot so much and is going to impact the plot so much because it all revolves around him. So every decision he makes is going to have major repercussions, be it good or bad. But I won't go into too much about my story for now. Once again, that's another discussion, and I think I'll wrap it up for today. This was my thoughts on. Tell me what you thought in the comment section below, or message me on YouTube, hit me up on Twitter, or PM me on my Fictionpress account. Stay charged, guys. Raijin out.